I consider this, I think, to be the most important, certainly the most difficult tutorial that I've ever endeavored to produce. The Ballade, as Horwitz like to call it, it's not only loved by listeners, it's essentially a cornerstone of piano literature, so pianists know this really well. So I want to do right by everybody and give this piece, all the time and attention that it deserves. So this tutorial will take its sweet ass time, I have to say. I'm going to take my time with every part of this. I'll give you the fingering, the requisite techniques required for it, and more than normal, I'm going to talk about interpretive elements, how to turn this music, how to bring this music to life in a tasteful and artful way. So it'll be the deepest and most thorough look at a piece that I've done to date in tutorial format. That being said, I'll begin by, as usual, playing through the first bit of the music. I'll go through the intro and first theme. Then we'll start from the top, take it apart, and I'll show you how to learn yourself. All right, so here it is, the Ballade number 1 by Chopin. This is where we'll stop. Absolutely gorgeous. It's an immortal theme. It's amazing. Okay, so let's begin with that intro, shall we? All right. You start heavy, and essentially what the first 4 bars or so amounts to is a kind of improvisation, or it should feel like an improvisation, where you're kind of meandering, looking for the theme, which you eventually do play. So you have to always think in terms of what the audience is hearing, and you have to assume that the audience doesn't know the piece. So you can't give anything away. Everything has to feel like it's been played and listened to for the first time. When you begin with this, with these C's, nice and heavy, in both the hands, it's the same notes in both the hands, traveling in octaves. And you begin with the pedal down to give it a sense of scope and size. When you open. And let's deal with the left hand fingering first. Now, when you're playing this, it should feel as smooth as possible. All of these... Sometimes people play a little bit choppy. It should feel very, very liquid, very, very legato. And to do that, here are the fingerings for the left hand. We begin with a 5. And since it is improvised, we don't have to think, or it should feel improvised. It's quite free, and we don't have to think too much about counting. This is just, improv. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Right. When you play this, make sure to, not be sticky. Be free to pivot and move across the keys so that you can reach this, because this whole section is very wide, especially for the left hand. So 3, 2, 1. Pinky travels beneath and lands on A flat. And then we have repetition, more or less. 3 across to B flat. That's really far, isn't it? To 1, finishing with the pinky the same way we did an octave below. So obviously this is quite wide. If you cannot reach this, I mean, do your best to pivot across. This, moving from here to here, is the most difficult part of the introduction. So take your time with this. If you really can't reach this by pivoting even a little bit, then leave it and arrive here. It's not ideal because you want it to be as liquid as possible, as strung together as possible, but if you can't do it, you can't do it. Okay, so here we are now, right? Repeats, continuing forward, all the way up to here, up to the C, and then we change into something a little different. 4, 2, 3, 1, and resolves to F sharp, second finger. There's your left hand. Strung together again. Like that. Now, as you're doing this, the light at the end of the tunnel should feel something along the lines of one single movement to the right. Right, as you're learning this, you have this, then you pause, then you move across, then you pause, you move across. Like you have to do it in chunks, obviously. As you get better and better at it, make it so that the movement to the right is singular. It's unified. There are no halts. It's all one smooth motion. You see? That's what you're going for. In terms of interpretation here, this section, yes, it's very smooth, very, as I said, legato, but there is a kind of regal, majestic quality to this. It kind of reminds me of one of the themes from Finlandia by Sibelius. I think it's in the same key as well. Right? So it does have that kind of majestic quality that you have to bring to bear on this one. And it starts off in this grandiose way, and when it finishes, we're taken somewhere else. It's like a left turn. And then we go somewhere else after that, but let's do the right hand before we move on. We know that the notes are the same, so let's see what fingerings the right hand has to do to keep up. 2, 3, 4, 5. Easy enough, right? Always remember to pivot whenever there's wide spaces. Next, thumb. We open up. Then 2, pivot. 4 to 5. Thumb on A flat. Just the same as it was down here. Open up, same exact thing. 2, 4, 5. And just as you had in the left hand, things change. 2, 4, 3, 1. The 1 replaces the 2. This is Alfred Cortot's fingering. I think it's quite good. Resolving to second finger on F sharp. Take your time, rewatch both of these as many times as necessary, and make sure you can do it separately. String together. Like that. And again, one unified motion to the right, as much as possible. Put it together. Now, as I said, you begin with the pedal down to give the first note greater sound. because in a real piano, with the pedal down, the first note will cause sympathetic vibrations within the piano. So other strings will ring and it'll sound bigger, which is what you want. It starts pesante, heavy, loud. Now, as you move forward, if you kept the pedal down, it's way too messy, and I leave it to your discretion to decide how to use the pedal. In general, I think it's better to be on the drier side. You can add little bits of pedal in there just to kind of blend things where necessary, but on the whole, you don't want too much mixing, I think. So pedals down here, and then as we move up, lift on A flat. So potentially between these two notes is where I would put the pedal. And then lift, pedal, lift, pedal. If we went all the way to the end, that's what it would sound like. So between these two notes, potentially you can have a little bit of pedal to help with the connection, but on the whole, keep it fairly dry. Okay, so I think that's not too bad. Let's play it together and move forward. Heavy. When you get to the top, don't be too heavy up there. And then suddenly get quieter. Because all of a sudden, we're somewhere new. All of this has been the same. Right? Everything has that majestic quality until you get to this, and then somewhere quite new. When you let go of the F sharps, listen to the silence, because the audience is going to listen along with you. Nobody knows where you're heading. Again, you have to presume that they've never heard the piece before. So listen to that silence, and it'll feel heavy. It'll feel loud. The silence will be loud if you listen effectively. Then the next bit. Right? But I'll cover that in the next part of the tutorial. All right. I think I've covered everything. Yeah, I'm going to do it once more just to sort of have a look at how the hands interact. But since they're playing the same notes, I don't think there's too much more to say. I'll play it slowly so you can follow along and stop and play where necessary. Open up. So as I said, this is where it's most difficult. Everything else, just a little bit of practice, you'll manage to do it. Keep it very strung together, very legato, nice and heavy, and make a very clear tapering off at the end to show the audience that we're heading somewhere new. And that somewhere new we'll cover in the next part of the tutorial. Stick around. Let's move forward.